pray for Karina and
Definitely.
a bunch of other folks. Fill out your green cards
That's
on your
right.
table there for your prayer requests. Put them in that red mailbox. We'll pick them up and go over there, and with you, we'll pray together. Meet us at 7:30 right over there in the chapel.
Okay, Tricia, say something about devotions and other things. Go ahead.
We've got our devotions card up here again, and we have a new one coming out this month. It's a cappuccino. It's a little bit of strong and a little bit of smooth mixed together, and it's a really great devotion coming out probably by next week if I can crank it out for you. Pastor Tay wrote that one, and it's about present sufferings, and it's a really great booklet. It's different from the ones that we have currently, as it's not chapter related. It's just one continuous topic, and it's a really great one. I was editing it this morning, and it's a really good book. So it'll go right along with this series of Getting Back Up Again. So we should have that out probably by next week. So it's a good one. And if you do have a phone that's somewhat intelligent, you can text me at 714-367-6113, or you can just fill out a card in the front, and or if you have a question, and then we can come up and pick it up from you if there's something relative that you'd like to discuss tonight.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you might notice on the screen that the website where you can sign up for free email devotions, we've got a bunch of people signed up for that. And notice it is now .com. And so I'm very happy about that because, as you know, .com is really difficult to acquire. But the .com became available 2 weeks ago, and I jumped at it because prior to that, as you know, it was .info. Now, the .info still works, but now we have the .com for your convenience. So JavaForLife.com. All right, let's get started. Well, we're so glad that you guys are here as we are going to start a brand new series. But in case you are visiting for the first time, or some of you guys came in transition when David was teaching on Ash Wednesday. And then we had Rao Alarcon teach last week. And so in case you need a reminder, live streams is inspired from Psalm 1, which talks about the blessed man or woman as like a tree that is planted by the streams of water. And the analogy is that it's all about being in the right location where the water is a source of life. And so the whole point is that the Word of God is like that water that streams into our spiritual roots and makes us strong. And so even though we do a lot of techie things and we do a lot of fun things here, it's all about the Word of God and how it makes our lives that much better and richer. And tonight, we're going to launch a new series called Getting Back Up. And this series is about how your life is turned upside down or being turned upside down. And so you've been rolled over like a turtle and life is pretty hard. So has that ever happened to you? I mean, you're just going along happily, right? Like that turtle right there. And then next thing you know, you're rolled over, okay? And so your life just comes or falls apart. So when you're rolled over, then what are you thinking? How are you feeling? How do you get back up? And so this series is about a Christian response to this whole situation of being down. Now, we're going to go 4 weeks, okay? It's a 4-part series on this topic. And again, you can post things on Facebook. I'm going to be posting stuff there. You can email. You can text. And I'm going to do something we've never done in about a year, and that is we're going to take live questions, okay? Some of you guys don't want to text or you don't want to write something down on a napkin or whatever. Just raise your hand and just say it. And then we'll just repeat the question so that it gets recorded, and we'll take your question. So just raise your hand. We'll call on you, if we like you, that is. And then you guys can. And of course, everyone, let's give it up for David and Tricia. They're part of our Interact team. And this is something new. We've been doing this for a couple of series now where instead of me just talking, I'm going to just stop and then put you guys on the spot. You love that, right, David?
I'm deeply in love.
Okay, I can tell.
Every week.
All right. So we're going to interact, and I think that keeps it, I think, very fresh, and it's going to be all good. So David and Tricia, do you guys ever feel like that guy? Ever feel like your life has been turned upside down?
I thought I could lay like that.
Microphone.
I could lay like that on my stomach and be in the same situation, I think. But yes, I have.
Okay. All right. In fact, raise your hand if you ever had your life turned upside down. Get at any point. You see, all of us can definitely relate to that topic. So we're just getting warmed up right now. So let's get warmed up by asking, the question, what happened? Okay. So what happened to this turtle? So David, Tricia, so put yourself in the turtle situation. What happened to this turtle? Okay. What do you think?
Somebody done him dirty.
Okay, but what? What do you think
I
happened?
think they flipped him.
Okay, so somebody came along and flipped him. All right, that's a good answer. Okay, what do you think, Tricia?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he was kind of walking around and a dog sniffed him and.
Another animal might have
Yep.
just pushed him over.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
what
that's
else?
what happened.
What other kinds of things might have happened?
He could have been on a uneven keel.
Right,
and
fell over, like rolled down a hill and then end up like that. Okay?
The wind
Or
could have blown him
The
over.
wind could
yes,
have done that.
that is if he's in
Okay.
Kansas. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have to ask
All
Pastor
right.
Stan. Maybe that's what happened.
So the whole point is that it was done to him. You guys get it? So he didn't do it to himself, but it was done to him. It could have been a predator. It could have been the wind. It could have been a boy that came along and, for fun, just flipped him over. And so this series is about things that happen to you. It's not a series about something you did to yourself, okay? How you destroyed your own life. That's another series, okay? This series will try to focus more on how things just happened to you. I mean, you didn't see it coming. On a serious note, you could be a victim of some abuse or some assault or some accident or some tragedy. Okay, so that you guys get it? That's kind of what this series is about. It's about things that happen to you. So what are some things that could happen to us? What do you guys think? Name some categories. Like, again, I've given you a couple, like an abuse. Okay?
Death in the family.
A death in a family. And depending on who died and how close you are to that person, that could be devastating. It could turn your life upside down or rolled over like a turtle. Okay.
I was going to say family, but I was thinking more of a situation where there was something that a family member did that because of the relationship, your life could get
Okay, so
upset pretty
something
bad.
dysfunctional in the family or someone in the family did something really bad and it affected the whole family. Definitely, that stuff happens all the
Or
time.
didn't do something really
Or
good. They had an
didn't do.
opportunity to.
Okay, so again, the whole point is it happened to you. You didn't see it coming. You weren't involved, but now you're impacted by that situation. We're still warming up to what this series is about. So what are some other kinds of things?
How about a diagnosis of some sort?
Oh, that's a good one.
Health,
Okay,
health issue.
health-related.
Mhm.
Okay.
As a young family, a lot of children experience bullying on a different level.
Bullying. Okay.
Something along those
Uh-huh.
lines.
And that can, and even with the health issues, if you get sick, that could create a domino effect where you might lose your job as
Yes.
well. And now a loss of a job. Oh, here's a big one: the economy. Did anyone get impacted or affected by the economy crashing? Okay, so huge factor right there. In other words, you really didn't do anything, but it happened to you, and so that's what this series is about. So the focus is more on what happened to you. This isn't about how you did something to yourself. We'll talk about that in another series, okay? But we're going to focus more on how things could happen to you. So I guess I want to carefully say, you might be innocent, okay? It's more situational, okay? When things happen to you, then how do you, like, for example, you could have been a great worker at the job, but somehow you got laid off. And so now we're dealing with these types of situations. So that's what this series is about, getting back up. How do you get back up when situations just did you wrong? Okay? And I think we've all been in that type of situation. Now, I said this series is 4 weeks long, right? And I'm going to give you the itinerary up front. I rarely do this. I usually try to keep you on your toes, right? Keep you in suspense. But this time around, I'm going to give you all 4 up front. Here you go. You got the whole shebang right there. Number one, we're going to talk about your faith. Meaning, as a Christian, what is your Christian response to the fact that you've been rolled over? Next week, we're going to talk about the feelings. Inside, when things happen to you, there's all kinds of good and bad feelings. How are you going to sort them out? How are you going to respond to all the things that are welling up inside you? Because when things happen, boy, it gets very emotional very quick, right? And we're going to talk about that. Number 3 is a big one. Memory. Or painful memories. When things happen to you, there's so many things that are difficult to forget. And so how do you deal with all the pain that comes as you're constantly remembering all the things that have happened to you? Okay? That's week number 3. And last but not least, very important, is your future. Now that all this has happened, how do you go on? Yeah. How do you move on when all these things? Now, this is one of those series, I have a feeling, at every step of the way, you're going to say, yeah, but what about, it's one of those series where there's just so many things. So I have a feeling we're going to have to come back to this series sometime in the future. So this is kind of like part 1, okay? We won't be able to answer everything, but let's get started, shall we? Swipe the blackboard, and we're going to start with number 1. What was number 1? Faith. It was faith. And so we're going to talk about your faith because this is always the first place that you begin when you are rolled over, because it's kind of a private time. It's kind of you and God. And you got to reconcile your situation with God. So it's faith in God and the fact that God, I mean, you thought that God had a wonderful plan for your life, right? What is going on? So I know you're not going to like this. Some of you guys are not going to like this. I'm going to put a very popular phrase on the board, okay? God has a wonderful plan for your life, okay? Some people believe this with all their hearts, and then there are other people that scratch their head and say, no, wait a minute, okay? All right, take out wonderful. All right, okay, before we take out the word wonderful, let's interact, okay? Define wonderful. What is wonderful? I'm talking about Webster. How would Webster Dictionary define wonderful? What does that mean? Okay, just simply.
I don't know what Webster said, but we're in 1 Peter in our Tuesday morning class, and we just looked at a good definition of that. And Peter was quoting out of Psalm 34, I believe. And he says, "He who loves life and sees good days." That sounds to me like a wonderful life. He just loves life and he sees good days. That sounds pretty good.
There's definitely a wonderful aspect of the Christian life. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But my point is, I'm trying to flesh out the fact that there's something problematic about this phrase. And please don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say, but there's kind of a problem here because the word wonderful in just everyday language means like exciting or happy or good.
It just like wonderful. It seems like it's out of...
You just feel great.
Yeah, it's just
positive.
Like exuberance,
yes.
out of your own imagination, kind
of.
Like
so
it's
when you say God has a wonderful plan for your life, it sounds like happily ever after, doesn't it? Yeah. Like your life is going to end up happily ever after. And that, to me, is problematic because that sounds like Disney, right? Happily ever after. Doesn't every Disney movie... Okay? Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot, David. Yeah. Name all the princesses on the screen. Okay, start on the left.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Not the dwarves, all right? So just tell me the...
Well, I'm just counting them on the... That's how many I see. I gave them names of numbers.
The first one is...
I'm a mathematician.
Snow White. Okay. Second one is...
I have no idea.
Aurora, Sleeping Beauty.
Well, when she was a teenager, her name was Briar Rose.
Briar Rose.
Okay.
And then she's
But
Aurora.
that's Sleeping Beauty.
And then she's Sleeping Beauty.
Aurora. Then she's Sleeping Beauty. That's
right.
Some
personality
Very
issues.
Good. Okay. And then you have Princess Jasmine. Then you have Ariel. And Beauty and the Beast.
Belle.
And then last but not least, Cinderella. And with every one of these, it is kind of that theology of, you know what, even though life is hard, don't worry. It's all going to turn out well. God has a wonderful plan for your life. That kind of theology, okay? And I'm sorry, okay? If you want to duke it out with me after class, we can do that. I mean, talking verbally, that is, okay? But I have a problem with this because it can be seriously misunderstood. I would prefer the phrase, I just made this up, okay? God has a greater plan for your life. Okay? Think about that. In fact, if you guys read any of my devotions, Trish, I'm going to put you on the spot because you edited all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Every one of them ends with what phrase?
God has a greater purpose for your life.
God has a greater purpose. Every one of those devotions, and I've wrote quite a bit now.
And I've read all of them.
She's read quite a bit. Every one of them ends with that because it's a great reminder that your life is more than what you think it is. God has a greater plan for your life. To me, that is more theologically correct than for you to wait for your life to turn out to be happily ever after. Right. That may not happen. Right. Your life might get rolled over, if you know what I mean. And so, David.
When you think about what Paul was told, remember on the road? When Ananias came by, he says, God tells me to tell you how much sorrow you're going to suffer, how much you're going to suffer for me. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't good news. I mean, it was good news, but it wasn't happy news.
And in his spiritual journey, he even prayed that the thorn would be taken away from him, and God didn't. Yeah. And so definitely there's many places we can go to confirm that sometimes suffering and hard times is a part of our life. And it's not wonderful. And I'm going to say, maybe not tonight, but later on, I'm going to say it's all right to be disappointed or dissatisfied and say, hey, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I thought it would be. And there's an aspect of it, and we're going to kind of sort it out. There's an aspect of it where you can go to God and say, you know what, I'm not happy about this, okay? And I think it's okay to do that. And so we're talking about a faith, a perspective here, okay? So let's wipe the board, and I'm going to say, God has a greater plan for your life. Yes, Lee.
How about God has ordained a plan for your life?
Nice. I like it. Did you see my notes ahead of time? He said God has ordained. That's a good word. That is a really good word. In fact, you're going to see that word at the end of my presentation because that's the word that's going to kind of strengthen our faith, okay? To realize that everything that happens to us is God's ordination. Okay, so your faith is going to be put to the test. That's very nicely. Okay. Yes, and so next week we'll talk about how do we approach God. And I did say a second ago that we can actually express disappointment to God, but there's also an improper way where we vent our anger against God and blame Him. And we're going to have to sort all that out. But that's very nice, Gay. You're anticipating where we're going. So good stuff here. Very, very good stuff. So we're talking about, as you can see on the board again, wonderful plan? Not really. It's more of a greater plan for your life, an ordained plan for your life. And so what we want to do tonight as we're talking about our faith is try to understand two things. On the one, we have God's plan. What would be on the other side? Our plan, okay? So we got to understand these two things, okay? And so there are actually many passages, but the passage to me that is the classic passage on our plan and God's plan is Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. I'm going to tell you, you need to memorize this verse, or if you can't memorize, you need to put it on a card and put it in your back pocket. And you need to have it there, okay? And if it gets in the washing machine and worn out, okay, make another one. You need to have this verse because this verse is what helps you get back on your feet as you reconcile these two great plans. So let me read it. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. The heart of a man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps. And so do you see the two things? Your plan, God's plan. Those are the two things that are going on. And so let's put that on the board. Your plan, and what was the other one? God's plan. And therein lies the two things. And I'm going to say, very simply, the Christian life has both. Don't make it too simplistic, say, well, it's just God's plan. No. This verse says there's two plans. Your plan and God's plan. And so we need to figure out the relationship between it, okay? So we got these two plans, and I'm going to give you 3 quick points as I unpack this verse for you. You guys ready? Here's number 1. Your plan will not be completed. Okay? You got 2 plans. They both exist. But number 1, your plan will not be completed. So let me ask you, David, Tricia, did every detail of all your plans come to fruition?
Absolutely.
Really?
Thank God not. Absolutely.
All right.
No.
Raise your hand if every detail of your life came to fruition. Okay. Obviously, no one raised their hand, because of course not. We know nobody has a life where every single detail worked out exactly the way they planned. So I'm going to say in the biggest picture, the cosmic perspective, number 1, your plan will not be completed. And that is going to cause a lot of frustration, a lot of stress, a lot of disappointment, a lot of anger, okay, regret, all kinds of feelings will come to you. Now, I'm going to show you, question, yes.
Do you make a distinction between way and steps? Like one's kind of the course, the goal, and the steps may be the day to day, moment by moment.
The instances that
anything
happen
like that?
along the way,
Yeah.
the rocks that you trip over and the streams
just-
you go through.
I'm going to have to go back to the original Hebrew and check, because see, this is the NIV, and NIV is
I
always a little...
stumped you, didn't I?
Yeah, well, NIV is a little paraphrastic.
Now we're going to be late, sorry.
But it's highly possible that that word way could be the Hebrew word derek, where Derek got his name. Okay? If that's the word, then it could be the general idea of direction. And then the word steps could be more of the specific everyday thing. So I'm not sure at this point, but it's a good question. The other thing is this. Line 1 and line 2, by the way, you know that Proverbs is poetry, and 2 lines are parallel to one another. So even though you might want to make a big deal out of distinctions between way and steps, we got to remember the function of line 1 and line 2 is parallelism. And therefore, in many ways, there's a certain synonymous relationship where it just might be another way of saying it. Okay? So I'll talk a little bit more about parallelism in a little bit, but you got 2 lines that are parallel to one another. We'll unpack that in a little bit. But I'm going to show you some pictures. Actually, we got a question back there. Diane, comment.
7 verses, 7 different translations.
Yes.
All use steps.
Okay.
All the translations.
All right, sounds good. So it's highly possible that there's an additional emphasis on the everyday steps right there. Sounds good. Good job, you guys. Keep on digging. It's just what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to show you some pictures, and you think about how this person could be a candidate for major disappointment. Okay? You guys ready? The mother. Okay, I don't know who she is. I just downloaded this picture. But the story goes, a true story, she had a baby every year for 5 years in a row. And so she now has a beautiful family, good-looking kids. Tell me how she might be a candidate for major disappointment and her life could be turned upside down. How? Darren. Oh, her husband could leave her, and now she becomes a single parent, which is the fastest growing demographic in this country right now. That could devastate her completely. Sally?
One of those children could die.
Yeah.
One of those children could die. You know, I found out the true story. We prayed for Gabby and Anna,
Yeah.
and I found out yesterday that I told you they were twins, right?
Yeah.
They were actually triplets. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Gabby was a twin.
But
Was
they
identical.
lost. They lost a third. Okay. And so, yeah, definitely these things happen. And what devastation to a mother if a child passes before her, gay.
Worse than dying would be a major illness.
Illness. Or so now, see, we're on this where you're thinking exactly what I want. Some illness, some devastation, some family loss with a husband walking away, or one of these kids becomes a drug addict or runs away from home, or some catastrophe.
Well, I know as a mother of young children, you raise them in the church. And from experience with my mom, before she passed, her prayer was that both my brother and I came to the Lord, and only one of us has. So that was kind of, it threw her on her back, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm praying for him still.
Yeah. Quick true story, just takes 10 seconds, but this is absolutely true. A young girl, she got a perfect score on the SAT, and she ended up going to UC Berkeley. And as soon as she got there, she's away from her parents, and she denied the faith. Yeah. And so that was a devastation to the mother. And so this is what I'm saying is, if you emotionally and spiritually invest everything into your children, and then something goes wrong, where there's a death or what have you, your life is turned upside down. What about this? Okay? What does this picture tell you? How could this person's life be upside down? Rough diagnosis, something that's life-threatening. Maybe he lost his job now as a result of his health situation. Maybe it was ongoing ever since he was young, and he had dreams of being a professional athlete, but now, years and years of sickness, that dream is completely shattered. And so these things, this person could be a candidate for this type of life crisis. How about this? Okay. The super organized person. How could this person be a candidate for a life turned upside down? Computer's going to crash.
Don't even say
or
that.
Everything's going to. In other words, if a life is not going to turn out exactly the way you want, because they're super organized, right? Everything has to be done exactly the way they want. All right?
That may not be a bad idea.
Yeah? So, I've been counseling now for more than 20 years. People come in with outlines of how their lives are supposed to be. And, their frustration is it just did not turn out that way. And so the super organized person could fall into that. Last but not least, what about this person? The middle-aged man. Okay? How do you think he might, or his life, turn upside down, the middle-aged man? Okay? Job. Especially with men, your first thing you think is his career did not turn out the way he wanted to. He didn't get the promotion. He was passed over. He lost his job. So, what does a middle-aged man, what do you call that? A midlife, right? So a midlife crisis is looking back and feeling regret, and looking ahead and finding no hope. And now you're just stuck. And so these things happen all the time. Wow. I said we can all talk now. We're not going to finish any of this stuff tonight. All right. Okay. All right. So let's wipe the blackboard and say, your plan, God's plan. What was number one? Your plan will not be completed. Okay. Now we're running out of time and we're not going to be able to finish. So I'm going to finish it up next week. Remember, it's my commitment to end at 7:30. We've got about 7 minutes left because we definitely want the little ones to get home and go to bed, okay? But you guys, the night is still young. When I end at 7:30, you need to go and pray, all right? So that's the plan. But speaking of plans, number one, your plan will not be completed. Here's number two. But keep on planning, okay? Now remember what I'm doing. I am interpreting Proverbs 16, verse 9. In Proverbs 16, verse 9, when you read it carefully, there is no criticism of you planning. Okay? Now here's where I said we're going to talk about the parallelism. In poetry, lines are parallel. Even in English poetry, you know how one line rhymes with the next line? It ends with words that rhyme, you know what I mean? And so in Hebrew poetry, it's the same way. Line 1 is parallel to line 2. In this case, look at line 1, which is, the heart of a man plans his ways, right? Line 2 is, the Lord establishes his steps. what is the relationship between line 1 and line 2? Well, the but. It's the but. And scholars call this antithetical parallelism. You don't have to memorize that. The point is that you have one, but now the second line is a but. It's a contrast. But here's what I'm saying. Even though there's a contrast, usually in antithetical parallel poetry, both lines are true. There is no criticism of line 1. And so I had to give you point number 2. We don't want to overreact and say, well, it's just God's will, and then you just give up and just roll over and just stay there. No. Proverbs 16:9 clearly says, and does not criticize you planning. Conversely, I want to say, wouldn't you agree, David, that somebody who doesn't plan, that's bad, right? Doesn't the Bible, have much to say about having direction and purpose? I mean, Trisha, you're a young mother. Don't you plan? Don't you make schedules?
Well,
it's definitely an important part of life.
Well, yeah, I think so. And I think you have to keep planning as far as I'm concerned, because that's part of your growth in getting stronger too in the
so
process.
what are some things you would plan for your life as a young mother? Just give categories. You don't have to give.
Like where my kids are going to go to school, and
that's a big decision.
Where they're going to take extracurricular activities. What kind of job am I going to have? Am I going to work till how old am I? My retirement plan.
And all of those things
like
as
that.
a way to provide for your children and also provide for the later
What
chapter.
are they going to eat for lunch that day? Yeah, just stuff like
So
that.
then let's say it this way. It would be irresponsible of you not to plan.
Oh, right.
Yes. In fact, we could say you would be unfaithful before God if you didn't plan.
Right, I agree.
Okay. And so in every way, God calls you to be faithful planning. I mean, tell me, David, you're an engineer. I'm sure, super organized. Didn't you have a lot of plans in your life? Okay. Okay.
They all failed.
You disconnected your microphone.
He did it on purpose.
All right, so you got to fix your
That
microphone.
wasn't his
there,
plan.
Okay. But yeah, don't you guys all plan? Okay. Those of you who do not plan, you need to start planning. Okay. You need to start making plans because it's God's will. Conversely, okay, it would be very wrong of you not to plan and just sort of drift along with no direction. You should always be planning and making sure that you are faithful with what God has given to you, David.
The Jesus teaching about being wise as serpents but harmless as doves, isn't that a planning kind of a exhortation? He was talking about some other people and says, even they do things, and you ought to be. There was some verse like that.
Yeah, that's Matthew chapter 10.
Yeah.
The shrewd as snakes definitely is a word that in a good way he was using, which is unusual because shrewd can also be a bad thing.
Yeah.
But he was talking about it in the sense of managing and thinking quickly about what you have. And so definitely included there.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, when we're talking about the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his step, when you think about a path, there's rocks and bumps and hills and valleys. If it were a straight path, it would be too easy and you wouldn't grow. But if you have to figure out the ways to go ups and downs and you put your faith in God to get over those bumps and hills and valleys, you become stronger. It's like when you break a bone, when it fuses back together, it's much stronger. Even though it wasn't your plan to break it, when it's back together, it's stronger. Mm-hmm. So those hills and valleys and rocks are those, maybe those steps that God intervenes in your path, and that way you just become a stronger individual from
There, you've understood it.
with your faith.
You've understood it. When your life falls down, you got to understand that, you understood the parallel, Trisha. You got to keep planning, but you also know that God is involved in your life, and there's a reason why, as
Without
you've
those
explained
rocks,
it.
you wouldn't be a stronger
All
person.
of those things. Very, very good. Okay, so your plan, God's plan. What was number 1? Your plan will not be completed. What was number 2? Keep on planning, okay? Don't make it into an excuse. You got to get back up and keep on planning because that's what God wants you to do, okay? Very important part. And as Trisha anticipated, where we're going is acknowledge his plans, okay? You're kind of in the middle trying to understand you're planning, but God is still working in your life. That's kind of what the devotion is about, right? The one that I'm working on. God is working in your life. And hopefully that devotion will come out before this series is done. And
It will. It
yeah, okay. All right. So, Proverbs chapter 16:9, the heart of a man plans his ways, the Lord establishes his steps. So, when you get rolled over, you got to understand it the way Tricia has explained it. She was articulating it from a faith perspective. Remember, tonight is about your faith, right? That you got this situation, there's bumps along the road, but it's about strengthening your faith, it's about God working in your life. It's all of those things. So as we end tonight, okay, David, go ahead. I'm going to set up something. You keep talking.
Go back to the previous slide. You said the last point was acknowledge God's plan.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with that. Sorry. We don't know His plan generally, but Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 tells us what to do. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, and then He'll direct your path, which kind of follows the second line of your Proverbs.
Okay. You're reading too much into what I'm saying.
That wasn't his plan.
There's only 3
David.
words.
We are acknowledging the fact that He is working in your life, but we don't know the details of His plan. It's when Lee says there is such a thing as God's ordination. We are acknowledging the existence of that without knowing all the details of that. So apologize right now.
I apologize.
All right. Okay, thank you.
You make more than I do.
Okay, now come over here, David.
Oh, man, he's really going to do it.
All right.
Oh, what's up?
As we end tonight, what's that say? Okay, this is your plan. And what is the other side? God's plan. And our life is kind of in the middle, trying to, live in this way. And so we have my plan and God's plan, and we have, this is the path that we walk. All right, David? Go ahead and walk the path. I expect you to fall. I expect you to fall. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm just saying I expect you to fall. But listen, before you fall, on either side, I want you to interpret your fall for me. Okay, interpret it. Go ahead, fall. Walk and fall. That's God's plans. That's my plan. Life is, he did not fall. Proverbs 16:9 is about walking the tension between the two sides. Okay? Let's have one scenario. Tricia, go on now. Okay? And let's see if Tricia falls. Okay? Okay. Okay. Okay, so Tricia, stay there. Trish, stay there. Here's a microphone. Here you go. And tell me.
Don't answer that.
Okay, so you fell. You fell on the side of your plans.
I did.
Okay.
Oh, that was convenient.
Okay, so if you fall on the side of your plans, tell me, is that okay or not okay?
Well, you kind of have no choice because your plans are going to fail anyways, so you might as well just go with it.
Well, I guess what I was thinking was this.
Oh, whoops,
that-
I answered wrong.
Well, I was thinking that if your plan works out, that's not a bad thing. Because God does give you the desires of your heart, does He not? Mm-hmm. So there are times in your life where God gives you, I can point to many examples in my life where God answered my prayers. Mm-hmm. Where God gave me the desires of my heart. So if you fall on one side and say, wow, my plan kind of worked out, not a bad thing. Okay? All right, you can get back up, Tricia.
Okay, I liked it down there.
If you fall on the side of God's plan, that's part of acknowledging that God may have a greater plan for your life. Okay? So, I'm going to just take 60 seconds. I'm going to close it out because next week we're going to talk about our feelings. Okay? So let me just advance the slides. He definitely does work in mysterious ways. These are some other verses that Proverbs 119, verse 133, direct my footsteps according to your word. That word direct and the word establish in Proverbs 16:9 is the exact same word in the original Hebrew. Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23. I know, O Lord, that a man's life is not his own. It is not for man to direct his steps. That is the exact same word as Proverbs 16:9, the word establishes. Okay? And so, as we're talking about these things, this is really about our life. It's about our story. And our story, the story that we tell other people, is a story about how things don't always work out the way we planned. But, Lee, it's God ordaining these things. And so one scholar put it this way: life is the God-ordained collision of two stories. God ordained. Okay? So you have two stories, my story and his story. And somehow it is a collision. And that is why your story never gets fully written out. God writes his story on these things. So the story that we ultimately tell is of our dreams, and they're not necessarily bad. Our plans, again, not bad, but God will guide us and direct us, and he will establish our path. Now, I know a lot of questions left unanswered. Unfortunately, we're up against the clock. But hey, it's not just us. But we're going to have to tell our kids, right? All our kids, they're going to be disappointed too, right? They're going to roll on their backs too. Their lives are going to be turned upside down as well. And we got to teach them a Christian perspective of how God works in their lives as well. Teach them how to handle disappointments, okay, setbacks, and things like that. Again, didn't get to finish tonight, but that's the beauty of live streams, is that it's a 4-week series. You go home and you'll think of another question or a comment. You can email it or you can text it next week. And we'll just make this one big 4-week conversation that we have. You know, I kind of liked opening it up to the audience.
I did too, because I didn't talk so much.
And so, okay, so that was
it.
really good that we were able to interact like this rather than me just standing up here and talking, right? And showing you pictures. But thank you so much for coming tonight. Please go and pray about your plans tonight. And don't be afraid to tell God your plans. He wants to hear them. And ask God to bless your plans according to his will. Okay? Well, tonight, pray for Karina. Pray for other people. There's so many people to pray for. Thank you for coming tonight. God bless. Bye-bye.